there you are. Where have you been? I've been looking all over for you, dog. Look, we got shit to do. A while ago, I made this cutting board. You may or may not have seen me make it. You might have seen it because you've been in my walls. You might not have seen it because I didn't post a video about it. But the problem is, I only kind of like it. It's nice, high quality, I like it. Thick, heavy, it's like 16 pounds. It's like 18 by 12. It's a pretty big, beefy board. I've been waiting for someone to buy it, and none of you are buying it. So what's the deal? Anyways, I like it a lot. It's my favorite cutting board that I've made so far. Here's the pickle. I was going for a bit of a basket weave look, and between you and me, it doesn't look like a basket weave. I'm gonna try again. So this time, I got 3 species of wood. I got some maple, some cherry, and some walnut. I'm gonna stir those puppies up in a pot, glue them, cut them, glue them again, cut them again, sand them, plane them, sand them again. And I'm gonna try and make a cutting board that I like even more, even if it's just by a little bit. The problem is, between you and me, I think I'm about to drown. You're gonna watch me make this cutting board, whether you like it or not. The link to buy this cutting board is in the description, and if none of you buy it, you're in some big trouble. My dad is the CEO of Microsoft, and I'm gonna get all of your Xbox Live accounts banned. Okay, well, let's get started, I guess. How do I turn this thing on? Whoa, whoa. All right, the first step to any good woodworking project is to cut some shit up. I've got this 4/4 rough sawn walnut here. I need to cut it into manageable pieces so that I can run it over my jointer. I'm eventually going to resaw this walnut down to 1/4 inch, but you'll see here in a second, that's going to take a lot of work. This has been sitting on my shelf forever, and look how damn cattywampus this shit is. Part of being cattywampus is being filled with a whole bunch of knotholes, so I'm dusting out my nuclear fallout shelter so that I have a place to work and fill these knotholes. I came up with this new idea. I'm not sure I've seen anyone else do this before, but because we've got all these knotholes in this walnut, I says to myself, Self, what if we put black epoxy in here? The reality of the situation is I probably could have filled this with bubble gum and been okay. You're not really going to be able to see this in the end product. I really just got to do this to stabilize the wood as I continue to mill it. Now that I have filled my wood with plastic, I decided the best course of action would be to light it on fire. While that plastic is burning in the other room, I decided now's a better time than any just to shore up this maple and cherry. It doesn't really need to be milled too seriously, I just gotta get everything to a consistent thickness. I have now burnt a sizable hole in the ozone layer. I should be good now to plane off the excess black epoxy. While I'm here, I gotta focus my camera, I guess. And I also have to, like I said, get this maple and cherry down to a consistent thickness. Seasoned woodworkers like myself know only to run your dust collection when it is full. That way a whole bunch of sawdust ends up on the floor. This is perfect because sawdust absorbs the general sewage and vomit smell of my whole house. Alright, so I've run all my lumber through a planer, and I can confirm that the walnut is a thickness, but that thickness is too much. So I plan to first beat my radial arm saw into submission, because the next step is to rip this walnut down to 1/4 inch thick. Installed on my saw is a 40-tooth blade. The reason I know it's a 40-tooth blade is because I stopped the cut halfway through because the room had filled with smoke. A wise woman once told me to say that my mama ain't raised no quitter. Here I am again, doing the same thing, expecting different results, except this time the results are that I got so scared and I have pooped my pants. As it turns out, my mother did indeed raise at least one quitter, so here's that quitter installing a new saw blade once it came in the mail. I took a look at my old saw blade, and it reminds me of some socks I used to own in middle school, crusty and brown. So here I am right back at it again with this brand new blade, and you might notice it's cutting like butter. That's because I'm mostly cutting air. But eventually I get to the end of the cut, the 10% I was too afraid of before, and I push through, and it really does cut like butter. I flip the board over to finish the cut, and right here you can see that I'm unnecessarily confident. But don't worry, because that does not last long. I get 90% of the way through the cut, remember that resawing stuff is scary, and I once again poop my pants. I decided I was just going to leave that first board alone for the time being. I was going to start resawing my second piece of walnut. Everything was going well until all of a sudden it was no longer going well. I had a kickback so bad that it actually broke the blade guard on my saw. Yeah. Well, I'll be. Look at that. Despite all the signs telling me to stop doing what I was doing, I was still delusional enough to believe that things were going well. Huh. Who could have guessed? Who could have guessed? I would say that I pooped my pants again, but unfortunately I'm all out of poop. So I gave up any hope on finishing resawing this on the radial arm saw, and I just began to hand saw. You may think that this would take forever to do, and that is correct. It took forever to do, but sometimes doing things that take forever to do is better than dying. Here we go. And it's definitely off center, right? Like I didn't resaw in the middle bit, but like clean this up with a planer. And we're gonna be, come on brother. That'll clean up nice with the planer. I know it's all cattywampus, but that's pretty good. All right, brother. So it's been a week or so, but I did eventually finish resawing this walnut. I resawed it and I planed everything down to 1/4 inch. I had a bit of what you might call an oopsie here. I tried to get a little more ambitious and resume cutting even though I was scared and I shit myself. I don't know if you noticed, but this little part, this little end of this piece of walnut is about as thick as it's about as thick as a piece of paper. The fix to this was I had to go all the way out to Rockler. I had to get a shit ton more walnut. And by that I mean like 1 4-inch strip that cost me like $14 or whatever. I did resaw it, I made a patch, and then I had to sort of glue 2 1/4-inch little pieces together and planed it all down. So it's about time. I've taken my beta blocker, so now I'm good to do this glue up. Let's get started on this shit. The key to this glue up is we're gonna make a couple of sandwiches. One will be with cherry, the other will be with walnut. Fuck, that's not true. The other will be with maple. The bread is the walnut. I'm gonna do this all with 1 pair of clamps. I've got a set of parallel clamps. The problem is the only parallel clamps that I have are 4 feet long, and this table is not 4 feet long. The other thing I want to make note of, if you are following along at home in your cookbook, make sure that you have Type Bond 3. This used to say Type Bond 3, and then it got worn away. You could probably get away with Type Bond 2 if you're, panties are in a bunch, rent is due, and you know, your stock options haven't paid out. But realistically, this is going to come into contact with a lot of water. And what you don't want to happen is you don't want your cutting board to basically dissolve. So this is kind of like the one time I actually kind of have to use my apron. This is gonna get precarious real fast. So oh no, that's exactly what I didn't want to happen. That's terrible. Oh, okay, I'll set this on my washing machine for now. Some people can sort of hem and haw about, should I put wood glue on both sides, should I not? In this setting, I would probably do glue on both sides. What's gonna end up happening if you don't is maybe nothing bad is gonna happen. Maybe something bad is gonna happen. And what could happen is you don't get a good sort of bead of glue squeeze out. You're gonna have potentially, if you miss it in the finishing process, you might have a void in your cutting board. Any sort of nook and cranny that you leave open on a cutting board is a great place for bacteria to hang out. Build a home, start a family, send the kids to college, retire. That could potentially find its way onto your food. Most of the time that's probably not going to be an issue, but what if you invite the Pope over to your house for dinner? Glue ups like this are actually not that difficult to do, because you're kind of, really what you're doing is just laminating two pieces of wood together. What can be difficult is when you're doing a glue up that's not this simple. The pieces are kind of wanting to slide past each other, because you're kind of just putting lube all over your wood. I'm not an expert on that, I just haven't had success. I understand that I should probably put that in clamps while I work on this second part of the glue up, but I don't think it's going to take me that long. A lot of people invest in like silicone rollers and stuff to help with big glue ups like this. And while I am certain that probably helps, why would God give me fingers if he doesn't want me to finger paint? Now the problem, because I screwed the pooch a little on the resawing, is that I do, in addition, now have this seam right here in the two, you know, the two parts of my bun here. I'm not going to worry too closely about that until I get this puppy in clamps. Then I'm going to have heart palpitations. All right, see, this ended up not being a big problem that I got a little splooge on here. Okay, well, let me get a fresh pair of gloves on before I keep doing this. All right, puppy. New camera angle unlocked. Who is ready for their rectal exam? I'm hoping it's you. I'm hoping you're ready for your rectal exam. All right, here's a little trick for you. If you are doing a glue up like this, where you want to share a pair of clamps, but you don't want the middle parts to end up being glued together, use parchment paper. Glue does not stick very well, wood glue at least, does not stick very well to parchment paper. All right, I'm gonna move this to the side. Boy, do I hate this so far. Boy, do I hate this. My birthday is right around the corner. And if any of you guys want to be a good fan, you can get me some parallel clamps that aren't 4 feet long. People advertise, companies advertise their clamps by how many metric shit tons of clamping pressure they can apply. When you actually, in the real world, apply that much clamping pressure, what you'll find is that your shit gets all lumpy and squished. You gotta spend all this time fixing that problem. The Bremens by Harbor Freight would probably be a better set of clamps for this situation. Well, that looks kind of like a hot bit of mess. But it is glued together. I have made a mistake here, and that is putting way too much glue. Man, this does not want to focus, but boy, oh boy, look at that pile of dripping ooze right there. So it's been about 8 hours, and I have spilled or dripped an exorbitant amount of glue onto this work surface. Let's see if that old parchment paper trick worked. Kind of. Oh, definitely. All right. This one's pretty good. Whoa, this one's pretty bad. You remember how I said you don't want to put too much clamping force? Well, you definitely want to put more than I did. Look at that horrible fucking seam. I fucked that up so hard. Man, that's so bad. All right, so you kind of remember earlier how I was talking about maybe you don't need clamps with a ton of clamping pressure? I need clamps with a ton of clamping pressure. I've never done this bad of a job on a glue up that's, you know, relatively this simple. Now I caught this early enough that I think I can kind of clear out some of this partially dried glue, apply more glue, and just kind of force it into place. I mean, it is not perfect by any stretch, but brother, that is so much better. Well, look at me now. Look at me now, brother. Look at me now. All right. Watch this puppy. You don't even know what's about to happen. Whoa! Look at that glue squeeze out. Whoa. Okay. Maybe got a little too excited with the glue. Again, go fucking figure. Alright, so now we've got our sandwiches made. I want to take the extra step and clean up that edge, the edge of the sandwich, cut the crust off. It'll make it a lot easier when I'm cutting strips on the radial arm saw to have something smooth to run against the fence. Alright, these puppies are still a little ugly on a lot of them with the excessive amount of glue that I put on there. But I cut a fresh edge on each side, and I've jointed this side over here. We should be good to cut the strips here on the radial arm saw. So the end goal here is we want these strips to be kind of like the square version of a tube, where both the height and the width are the same dimension. We know the height. The height is going to be the thickness of our ice cream sandwich here, which is just about exactly 1.25 inches. So that means when I'm ripping these strips here, I want them to be 1.25 inches wide. I'm going to actually overshoot that. This radial arm saw is about twice as old as I am, so it's got a little play in it. And it's not the perfect tool, it's not the best instrument, but if I cut things to like 1.3 inches instead of 1.25, that'll give us enough room that I can take them over to the planer and really square them up that way. All right, so now I've got my strips and I've laid them out in such a way, hopefully you can see kind of my vision here. I'm gonna have to end up cutting these strips in half and laying them again so that I can get a wide enough cutting board. But you can kind of see the pattern already starting to come out. Now these aren't perfect, they're very close. I do have to touch them up on the planer. But man, so far I'm actually really impressed with how well this has turned out. Hell yeah, brother. Look at this big old sheet of plastic. This part is still even wet. That's how way too much glue I put on. All right, let's see. Now that I've got these puppies into squares, and you just sort of saw that as a montage over on the planer, these are now squares. So I'm good to glue them up now, but the key with that is, while they are squares, they're not like perfect. I can't run these over the jointer or through the planer to re-mill them to be squares. I'm gonna lose way too much material. But their ratio between like width and thickness to length is such that I can coerce them into shape. You might be wondering, I mentioned that I want to glue them to be 12 wide. So why did I not first cut these in half before I do this glue up? Well, the reason is, if I keep this total glue up to be under 13 inches wide, and this is, then I can run these strips through the planer to get rid of glue squeeze out, to get rid of any sort of slight unevenness. What would make this easier? Maybe like a silicone roller? Or like a foam roller maybe? But why should I do that? Why should I buy one of those when I've got fingers for free? Is this enough glue? I don't know. We're gonna find out though. Once I get the first set of clamps on, I can wipe away some of the excess. This first step is mostly about getting the clamps on there. I'm not actually tightening down very much. I want just the pieces of wood, these strips. I want to see a little tiny bit of squeeze out because I still have to put on the culls. I don't want to squeeze these together too tight, then put on the culls, and the culls are not really doing anything. Before I put the culls on, I will be wiping down with some water. It's okay if I have a little bit of excess glue that sort of gets the water down. Okay. I'm going to use some clamps that are definitely overkill for this scenario. Oh, someone just rang my doorbell. And that is scary because I didn't invite anybody. I didn't invite any of you to come over until this is done. Hell yeah. Whoa, holy shit. Yeah, this is just gonna need like kissed in the planer so far. Just a little smooch. Yeah. Here's another trick for you. If you have the clamps to spare, and you're right here at the end, and you notice right here at the end there's a little bit of separation, clamp down like this, and that'll make a difference. All right. I've got this glue up set up in a torture contraption. I'm gonna let it hang out here and be tortured for a few hours. We'll come back, unclamp it, and we'll go from there. Honey, I'm home. It's been a few hours. Let's get this puppy up out of the clamps. I don't need the glue to be fully cured or anything before I run this baby through the planer. Glue on the bottom is still very wet. Yeah, super wet still. But I should be okay to clean it off. May not run it through the planer though. Well, well, well. Look where we are. Okay, so this glue is gonna look almost identical to the last one. I'm gonna raw dog this one. No condom. That was a little too much glue. Problem is, like, I have these nozzles that are on it, on my glue bottle. The problem I find is that they clog up with glue after every single glue up, and I don't have any interest in unclogging them. Sometimes they're really, really fun to do, because what ends up happening is it's like getting a really good booger out, and that is satisfying. That I love. I could have ran this over the jointer, but I didn't really want to. These have a little bit of curve to them, but not so much that I want to risk going over the jointer. Actually, I'll tell you what, that does kind of come together well. Now you're at the point where you're seeing nothing useful. Okay, the best way to see if something is flat is to compare it to something that's flat. And I'll be damned. My Harbor Freight level is definitely proving to me that my shot's not level. But boy, is it telling me that this puppy is flat. All right, well, that's sitting in the clamps for a few hours. I'm gonna go do something else. First step is to get rid of the squeeze out on the bottom. Hell yeah. God damn. God damn. All right. Okay. So what I'm doing now is I'm looking through here and I see like little bits of tear out like that. I'm just gonna knock them down with the sand. This is, what is this? 80 grit on a scrap. I don't really care too much that I'm rounding over these corners just a little bit, because I gotta flatten this cutting board anyway after the final glue up. And anytime that I see a little gap, it seems like there was a little gap, I don't know how well you can see that, right there. Watch this. Flip it over, it's gone. I'll just have that on the outside, I think. I'm gonna do like a little raw glue up test here. And by that I mean no glue. I'm happy with this. I'm happy with this. Let me get some parchment paper. Okay, I've learned my lesson from before. I'm not gonna go crazy on the glue here. Would it be okay if I did? Yeah, probably, but why risk it necessarily? You know what I'm saying?
You know what I mean?
Once again, like I have the rest of the project, type on 3 in this puppy. That's the only way to go if you're making a cutting board, in my opinion. I'm gonna put just the smallest amount more. I kinda gotta work a little faster than I typically would here, because it is so damn hot in this basement. Sorry, dungeon. It is so damn hot in this dungeon. The hotter it is, the faster this glue is gonna wanna seize up. And you know what they say about seizures. They're not good for you. You might be saying it's not enough glue, but uh-oh, look what we got here. Squeeze out. Uh-oh, squeeze out. That's for all the haters who said it wasn't possible. That's for all the haters who said it wasn't possible. We got squeeze out. That is good shit. I am in love with that. That shit tickles me. Well, it looks like what we have here, ladies and gentlemen, is called success. Some people might call this a cutting board. I feel like I'm almost done, but at the same time, I'm not done. I've thought about it. I do want to give this a little walnut border. It'll just give it a little bonus size because this puppy turned out a bit smaller than I would have wanted it to, but you know, such is life. All right, Buster, a little bit has changed since the last time I saw you, and I really do just mean a little bit. Took this puppy out of the clamps, and I did get around to making a little border for this puppy. Now I got about just over a 1/4 inch thick border of walnut around this thing, and you'll notice it looks pretty good. I didn't film the process because it's like whatever. Took a piece of walnut and I ripped it down in half, and then I book matched it, and then I book matched it again, and then I book matched it again. That's how I got a 1/4 inch thick piece of walnut that was wide enough, because remember, I can't do this like horizontally. I need this to be end grain, not edge grain. If I made this out of edge grain, it would explode. The other thing you might notice is this little black booger. There were knot holes all over this puppy, and say what you will about me, but I didn't do the best job about picking what walnut I used. So there were a lot of knot holes that needed to be filled, and you saw that. I should not have done that, but in my defense, I did it anyway. But it's time for me to unveil my secret weapon. You guys have not seen anything like this. My table turns into a table. Now you wait right there. If you move, I'm gonna kill you. But when you pair my table with this puppy and my router, and perhaps the scariest router bit of all time, what we have is a router flattening jig. Hell yeah, brother. All right, brother, you've caught me at the scene of the crime. For the other side, the planer is gonna be my friend. And you might be thinking, well, this shit is about to explode. That's where you're wrong. I've done this before, and there is a strategy. You can get away with using a planer for a job like this. I know that the common wisdom says you don't want to use a planer when it's something like end grain, because you got to think of these things like a bundle of straws or McDonald's French fries or something. You can kind of get away with this though if you've got a couple things. First, you've got to have a planer that has at least a spiral head, if not a helical head. The other thing is, each pass, I could maybe get away with the 64th of an inch, so a 1/4 turn per pass. The last thing you're gonna wanna do is put a chamfer on this puppy before you send it through. What's gonna wanna happen if you don't is that you're gonna get a shit ton of tear out, a booty ton, a metric booty ton of tear out right along this edge, and that's gonna take forever to sand out if it ever will. I got this shit looking crispy. Look at this absolute lack of tear out on the side. That looks like it could be a problem for the top side. Let me pick at that for a second and see what happens. If I can just dent that with a screwdriver, not pushing that hard, that tells me it should probably not be the top. All right, That puppy is filled. We just gotta wait for that shit to cure. Alright, it's been about an hour. I've come back, smoothed out that epoxy fill. I'm pretty happy with it overall. Uh-oh. Oh boy. Well, believe it or not, ladies and germs, it's time for a juice groove. This shit is gonna make me lose my marbles if I mess it up. No! No! That is terrible news. Oh no. Well, I think what I'm going to do is, it's an early enough pass. Let me just trudge forward. Oh, thank heavens. The good news is that was on such an early pass that because the juice groove got wider as I cut deeper, it's pretty much gone. Jiminy Christmas. That is always the scariest part. Hopefully, ideally, this is the last little bit. Say bless you. Jeez. Hopefully, this is going to be the last little bit of tooling, besides sanding, that I've got to do to this puppy. Alright, well, make fun of me in the comments for having a Harbor Freight router, but let me tell you, this puppy is actually pretty nice. Well, perhaps the finger holds are a little small. Brother, the day of reckoning hath come. I've got this puppy up, sanded to 180 front and back, but now that we're all sanded, the dust is settled. It is time to put some damn laxative on this puppy. I mean, not laxative, oh no. Oh, this is my favorite part. I feel like I'm at Diddy's house. I mean, I've never been to Diddy's house. So the plan here is coat this sucker in as much baby oil as it wants to be coated in. Boy, that shit looks delicious, scrumptious, delectable. Uh-oh, change of scenery. All that's left to do is to put the feet on there. I like to put my feet about an inch from the outside, but you know what? I'm feeling adventurous, so I'm gonna put my feet 3/4 of an inch this time. Yep. Come on, brother. There we go. Boy, things are not easy when you're covered in oil. I know it sounds like I'm using all my might here, but it's only because I am. You guys know what that is? Let me give you a hint. Still not sure? Well, let me show you. It's the last foot that need to be installed. What we have here, ladies and germs, is what we call a completed cutting board.
I want you to know I'm starting with the man in the mirror. I'm asking him to change his ways, and no message could be any clearer. Can remember a better place. Take a look at yourself.